This is the Rise of Third-Party Reviews, How to Make Them Work for You with Peter Troast from Energy Circle. This is the Build It Green webinar series. My name is Chris Cohn. I'm with Efficiency First California, and I am your moderator for today's webinar. We thank you for your time and have a very interesting webinar in store for you today. So first, I would like to welcome everyone. As you know, this is a webinar series designed for our home upgrade participating contractors, many of whom are on the call today. And we thank you for your services in providing home performance efficiency services to folks in the Bay Area and PG&E territories. Thank you for attending today. We also have in our audience members of PG&E's AC Quality Care Rebate Program, providing services to customers in the PG&E area regarding their HVAC systems and keeping them in good working order and performing efficiently. So thank you all for joining us today. First, I'd like to start with some updates of upcoming events that you may be interested in. On July 30th, we will be holding our July NorCal Collaboration Forum. For those of you that are not aware of this event, this is open to participating contractors in the PG&E territory, and we come together with our program implementer partners to identify barriers and collaborate on solutions to make the program work better for contractors and customers. We usually meet on the fourth Wednesday of the month, but this month we have switched that to the fifth Wednesday, which is the 30th. If you're interested in attending, please send me an email. My email address is on the screen there, and I'll get you on the list and send you the registration information. Next up, we have two webinars from Efficiency First, the national parent organization of our state chapter. They produce webinars on a regular basis for the residential energy efficiency industry. Tomorrow, the webinar features efficient operations, the little things home performance companies can do to save money and time, with three members of the Efficiency First California organization providing tips to you, their colleagues. So please attend if you would like to learn about that. On August 7th, again, another webinar from Efficiency First, Good, Better, Best, Navigating the All-Important Kitchen Table Talk, with three experts in the sales process. That is also going to be a very good event. To register for either of these webinars, you can go to the URL on your screen. These webinars are free to Efficiency First members, and I believe there is a fee of $50 to non-members to participate in the webinars. Next up, the Build It Green webinar series will be bringing John Tooley of Advanced Energy back to talk to us on a new installment regarding quality management, the 5S methodology and tracking problems. John is an expert in quality management issues, and this I am sure will be a very fruitful webinar, so please put it on your calendar. And finally, we have on August 12th the regional forum for participating contractors in the PG&E territory. This will be held at the San Ramon Valley Conference Center and will be an all-day event as usual with a value-add schedule. Oops, excuse me. Go back. Value-add schedule that includes program improvements, marketing, training, and education, as well as feedback sessions and opportunities for networking. So please put that on your calendar. These are always great events and something to turn out for. So for today, we have Peter Troast from Energy Circle, and Peter is an expert in marketing, web-based outreach, and social media, and how to use these new digital tools to have a strong presence on the web and be able to leverage the goodwill of your satisfied customers into referrals for new projects. So I would like to welcome Peter, and we will be hearing from him shortly. So before we dive into the presentation, I want to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar for about the last 30 minutes or so. And during the presentation at any time, please feel free to submit questions that arise to you as you're listening. On your control panel, there is a questions pane, and you can just enter your question there, and it will go on the list, and I will be relaying those questions to Peter during the Q&A session. So as we go through, just remember the question pane is there, and you can post your questions as they occur to you during the presentation. Okay, so with that, I would like to hand the presentation over to Peter, and welcome, Peter. Glad to have you on board today to learn more about third-party reviews.
Thanks very much, Chris, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody in California. I'm in Maine today, so it's afternoon for me. But I'm very excited to be doing this, and thanks to both Efficiency First and obviously Build It Green for having me and for putting this on. This topic of third-party reviews was something that at the end of last year I identified as one of the kind of mega trends for important marketing changes happening in our industry. And I think as this year has gone by, I think it's completely proven itself out to have been that. So hope this is really useful, and looking forward to your questions when we get to the end. So next slide, please. So what we're going to cover is, I want to touch a little bit on the data side of this, meaning, what do we know from consumer data about how consumers are using reviews and what the impact of those are and what some of those major trends are. There's a lot going on, as you all know, with respect to changes at Google about the Google Places and what's now called Google My Business that is very much impacts this whole review piece. And I know this is, no news to all of you in California, but Yelp just has made a major impact or major change in terms of its relevance to service businesses like all of ours in home performance. We'll then talk a little bit about, all right, what do you do about this? How do you develop a strategy and some process? And specifically talk then about which of these third-party review sites for folks in California are the most important to be paying attention to. Many of you know who have kind of entered into this game, there is a big problem with your reviews getting filtered, legitimate good reviews by customers that get placed on Yelp and never show up because of various filtering things. So I'll talk a bit about how to avoid that. And then finally, we'll just talk a bit about how do you kind of get this more systematized into your kind of daily business routine so that it's kind of a regular process. So that's the plan. And Chris, I think at this point, did you want to, before the next slide, did you want to stick a poll in?
Yes, we did. So Karen, if you could run the poll, that would be great. Okay, so this is the first poll, and we would like to know, as you see from the question and options there, how third-party reviews influence your business currently. So please take a few minutes to provide your answers, and we will be closing the poll shortly and be able to share the results to help inform our discussion.
So interesting. So, if I look at this, about 60%, sort of 60-40 on whether there's been an impact or kind of a non-impact, and I might have expected that to be a little bit more, given what I'm going to talk about and what's happening in California. But that's definitely interesting. So, good. Well, let's go to the next slide. Not sure about everybody else. Chris, I'm still, or Karen, I'm still seeing I'm seeing the kind of title slide now as opposed to the
yes.
as opposed to the slides.
Karen, can you check the poll, that the poll is closed? Oh dear. Hang on. There we go. We're back.
Got it. Okay,
to
good.
the audience, we've been having some gremlins plaguing us this morning, so apologize for that.
Yes, we have. So, the first point I want to make here is that at the end of the day, what we're talking about is still word of mouth, right? And for our industry, for all forms of home improvement businesses, word of mouth, is forevermore will be the most important form of marketing, the most impactful form of marketing that you have at your disposal. But what's happened with this rise of customer reviews is that now word of mouth is on steroids. It's no longer the old days of neighbors talking across the fence about the person who did great work or did poor work on their house. It's now completely out there. So next slide, please. All right, so just a little bit on the high level about why we want to think about this and why it's worth your time to focus on it. First and foremost, like I said, there is nothing better in this world than a third-party endorsement, and I think that's especially true in home performance because, as all of you know, what we sell is not very tangible and not very well understood by most consumers. So that third-party statement that said, I got this work done, and my house is vastly more comfortable, or whatever that is I think really, really important to all of us, especially in home performance. When you commit as a company to a review-based culture, it changes the tone of things. If your techs in the field, if your auditors, if whoever's going into the house are held accountable for the reviews of that particular homeowner, then that drives a culture in your company that's very good. I'll show you some data here that says that good reviews drive better conversion. We obviously know that. They also drive better margins. People are, highly reviewed companies can extract a higher margin and higher pricing. It is, as we'll see in some of the data, the new mindset of the customer. In some cases, what we're seeing is that before they even get to your website, they will go and look at the reviews first, and then once they've seen those reviews, go to your website. And for some of these sources, and in California, Yelp in particular, as I mentioned before, has grown so significantly. They're significant sources of traffic. In other words, and we're going to see some search results here where because these third-party sites perform so well in search, they tend to get the first click, and so the click to you is coming from Yelp, for example, to your website as opposed to you first. So that's very important. I think it's very important to say that no matter how perfect our quality processes are, no matter how well run we are as companies, things are going to happen. The crew's going to have an off day, the customer's going to be cranky in that particular day, and so it is inevitable that you are going to get a bad review at some point. And so the truth is that in some cases these third-party review sites tend to be a little bit more of the place where you give the bad review as opposed to the good review. Especially true on Yelp, which I think has a slightly, I call them, a more cranky audience. And so the solution to that, of course, is dilution, right? And there's even some evidence, frankly, that says a mix of reviews is more trustworthy than if you're 100% 5 stars. So a little bit of mix is good, but we'll talk a little bit about what to do when you get one of those negative ones. But at the end of the day, one bad review, if it's 1 out of 20, is not going to dramatically change your average score. Next slide, please. All right, so let's just go through some data, and I want to move through this fairly quickly. Next slide, please, just to sort of set the tone. One of the things that is important about reviews, we think about them as the way that customers find out information about you and make decisions about hiring you. In addition to that, however, reviews and the presence of reviews have become a very significant factor in how your business ranks in the Google local algorithm. And so without going into too much detail about that, I think all of you probably are aware that as local service area businesses, we are subject to a slightly different algorithm within Google when someone does a search for, let's say, air conditioning, Concord, California. And so one of the things we look a lot at are these local search factors. Next slide, please. And so what has been a proven fact is that of all of the key factors that go into local search, review signals, and that's not just, that's not positive or negative. It's the presence of reviews, the quantity of reviews, what we call the velocity, I mean the pace of reviews to your business, and the diversity of those reviews across lots of different places on the internet is a pretty significant, in this case, about 10.3% of this overall kind of factor in how well you are going to rank in that local search algorithm when somebody does that search. So very important for search. Next slide. These next few slides are from a study done by a company called Bright Local, and this is a statistically valid survey of consumers. And in this particular case, do you read online reviews to determine whether a local business is a good business? And I think what's important about this, if you the orange lines are 2014 in this case, is that 88% either are in the yes regularly or yes occasionally bracket in terms of reading online reviews. And you can just see the level of growth, from 22% 4 years ago to 39%. So it is really becoming a much more normal activity and expected activity by consumers. Next slide, please. One of the kind of interesting pieces here is the question of how many reviews do you need to look at before you can form an opinion. And what's happening is actually the trend is going down. So my interpretation of this is that consumers are getting more sophisticated about how they consume reviews. They can look at fewer of them. They have a better kind of discernment of whether this is somebody on staff or these are all 5 stars and they're kind of obviously fake. They can kind of triangulate through a series of things. So without going into the kind of too much of the geeky data here, the general trend is fewer reviews. The consumers are getting their information from fewer reviews than before. Next slide. So this one just kind of bears out that information, which is this is a percent of consumers in this study that read more than 7 before they formed an opinion. And so, in 2011 it was 44%. It went down and went down again. And so again, I think my interpretation here is people are just more, they're able to kind of sort through these reviews in a different way. Next one, please. This speaks to the impact of reviews in influencing your decision to use a local business. And I think, if you look to the right side of this screen where, see north of 60% in the most recent piece is positive customer reviews make me more likely to use a local business. And so versus other factors such as I tend to select the local business based on other things such as location and price, that's in decline. I read reviews, but they don't influence my decision. That's sort of mixed in data, but clearly positive reviews are definitely in the growth side of this curve. And then a couple more slides. Next one, please. So this is very interesting, and this asks the question of, all right, well, what if you see a review of a certain average, where is that threshold point at which it starts to cause a problem? And so the question they ask here is, what average star rating is too low for you to consider using a local business? And, the bottom line, if you kind of tally this all up, is that somewhere in that between 3 and 4 stars, 92% of people are saying that sort of in that 3.5 range is going to have a significant impact on their buying decision. And so if this is less than 3.5 stars is a very much looking to be a danger zone in terms of your ability to kind of gain business when people are using these reviews. Next slide, please. And then this is kind of a couple more data slides here. But one of the things this question asks, for what type of businesses does reputation matter the most? And of course, home performance and HVAC and so forth is not necessarily one of the categories, but if you look sort of at the tradesman, e.g. plumber, and builder roofer, which are the categories in this study closest to us, We are on the side of the graph where reputation matters the most. We all kind of know this. We are contractors. We love our business, and yet we face that cross to bear of what people think about contractors. And so the standards or the thresholds are even higher for us. That's the key point of this slide. Next one, please. I wanted to throw in a data, and this is a Forrester study from last year that just talked about types. This was framed in the context of types of advertising. So what types of advertising and promotion do people have the most trust in? And we don't need to go through all of this, but if you look at the top of the graph where you see the most trust, brand or product recommendations, professionally written online reviews, consumer written online reviews. And as you kind of go down, you see kind of more traditional forms of advertising have less and less trust. So again, more to the point that this kind of information is increasingly important. Next slide. Two more data slides. One of the things that I mentioned, is people tend to look at reviews first before they even look at you, and this is a, I guess, 5-year trend, if you will, in Google of people who actually type in the term contractor reviews, meaning that the search term is that they are looking for the reviews first before they're actually even looking for the contractor themselves. And you just see this trend line, which has got some, I assume, seasonal ups and downs and so forth, but from essentially nothing in 2000, whatever that is, 7, I can barely see it, to today, an absolutely upward trending line in terms of the number of people that are actually searching for the review first. And then kind of last data slide, next one please. There's some really good evidence in our category that says that people are willing to spend more for quality service. In other words, that the reputation that you may develop via these third-party websites translates, and where you see the arrows is pointing to the kind of the home services category, that there is the distinction between an average of 4 stars and an average of 5 stars had a 20% lift in essentially kind of in price, and so people's willingness to pay. And so I think there's really compelling economic evidence here. So that tells you a little bit about, next slide please, why the kind of what's going on in the consumer mindset and how people are looking at this. The other factor is these reviews are increasingly inescapable, meaning that they are so prevalent everywhere. This is a Google search for a company name. So in this case, if you saw the Evergreen Home Performance truck driving by, you sat down and searched for it. And if you look at what comes up on this screen, you see that right embedded in the listing, the search result listing for that is the stars that are coming out of Google. And then you see this thing over on the right-hand side, which is called the knowledge panel. And whenever Google detects that they're searching for your company, typically that knowledge panel will appear. And increasingly, the size of the type, the presence of those stars is getting larger and larger and larger, such that it's inescapable. You look at this. Next slide. This is also true, not just this is actually a Google Plus local page, and so again, I just emphasize how much real estate and prominence Google is giving to the size of those reviews. It's it is the most prominent thing. And then next slide. It's not just brand searches. This is a search in particular for energy audit in Virginia, which is the one I couldn't find somebody in California to produce this. But here the company result in the local listing comes up again with those stars embedded. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit. So next slide. With respect to Google, in Google Plus, the threshold for the stars appearing in a search result like this is 5 reviews. So when you cross the 5 threshold, as Arrow Insulation has at the top of this page, you will actually get the review average will appear in those stars. If you are somewhere in the 0 to actually I guess it's not, if you're in the 1 to 4 range, you'll see what you see under HHL insulation, 2 Google reviews, and if you have none, what will show is what the lower arrow to Ballard Insulation says is just Google Plus page. And so I think this, and then next slide please, if you are looking at a listing or a set of listings, and these are very often delivered in 7 results, but you've got these 2 listings here, one that's got reviews and a good number of them that are positive, and one that has nothing or at least has none showing, I think it's a fairly safe bet to say the company with those reviews and with those Google stars present is the one that is very much likely to get that click. So next slide, please. So again, quick summary of what we just went through. Consumers and homeowners are increasingly relying on them. It's a significant factor in how you're going to perform in search, how high up on that search page you're going to perform. There's evidence that better reviews translates to higher pricing. They are everywhere. And there's real danger, frankly, to having a bad average. I think that, which is very easy to do. I mean, there's a number of folks I know that, people can write reviews of you on Google and you don't necessarily even know about it. We're going to talk about how to make sure that doesn't happen in a second. But there is really potentially fantastic harm to be done to your company if you, fall into a trap of a bad set of averages or having to dig your way out. Finally, I would just say that this is not going away. And I think all of us know that this is a trend that is here to stay, and one that we very much have to live with going forward. So let's go to the next slide, and then so I wanted to now shift the discussion a little bit into what should your priorities be, and
Peter, did we want to run another poll question at this point?
Yes, I apologize. That's exactly where we're going to do that poll. Sorry, Chris.
Okay, so we're putting it up now. The question is, do you have an active process for managing online reviews? Yes, no, and sort of. If you would please take a moment to answer the poll question, and we'll take a look at it here in a couple of seconds, give everybody a chance to reply, because I think it's a perfect setup into the next section here that we want to talk about. Okay, I think we can go ahead and close the poll. Okay, so some people do. Most people don't have a management system in place, and a fair number of you have the beginnings of a management system. Great, thank you for replying.
Yeah, I think this is interesting and not surprising to me. That idea that that I think I stuck in sort of, and it might sound a little informal, but what I've found with working with lots of folks across the country is, you listen to somebody like me give a talk like this, and suddenly, we rush out and kind of that develop, we got to get on our reviews, and it tends to be a little bit more episodic than consistent. And as you'll see when we get through some of the discussions of why these filtering happens, evenness is very important, and that's why a good system is there. So let's now go to this discussion of, all right, well, what should your priorities be? What are the most important places for you? And the quick answer to this is, there isn't a one answer, right? I definitely am going to tell you that Google is very important and Yelp is very important, but I wanted to just walk through a few searches here, which I just did yesterday. So this is very fresh, fresh data, and this is what I would recommend that you do to try to determine what your own priorities are, because the one factor or one way to sort of measure the importance of these sites is how high up in search do they come for the search terms that are most relevant to your business. So this one in particular was Energy Audit Oakland, and you can see here that the city of Oakland comes up first organically, and second is Yelp. And so, to me, and this is, very much Yelp, I think, is very much a technology phenomenon. It's obviously, not surprising that the company's founded in San Francisco and is very much kind of about an online culture, which, those of you in the Bay Area, live in the midst of. So what I'm recommending you do to kind of test this is, do a search like this, Energy Audit Oakland. If we go to the next slide, and I just did it, these are somewhat random, but I tried to mix it up a little bit, both geographically. This is Concord, same search for Concord. In this case, Yelp is first. Then you see, a couple of, successful companies who are on their game. You see recognized names, ABC Cooling, and so forth, that are, that are in that initial mix. And then you see Better Business Bureau. So again, it's hard to kind of predict how Google kind of produces all of these results, but very interesting to say, we went from Oakland to Concord, Yelp's still high, but then suddenly Better Business Bureau gets added in. Next slide. This one I just went with kind of insulation contractor Napa, and so here and probably probably a reflection of the fact that straight insulation is a little bit more old school. Yellow Pages is still is still in the mix here. Yellow Pages comes up first. Home Advisor is in the mix, so third in this case, and then as you drop down below the local listing at the very bottom, you see Angie's list. So again, sort of using this kind of information, I guess I got one more of these slides just as a maybe two more. So here's air conditioning repair for Sacramento, and in this case, Yelp is dominating both the first and the second. And one thing I just want to point out here, which I think is well, it may not be that obvious. The first result you see here for air conditioning repair is the generic term, and so what that's going to do is put you on a page with a lot of different companies that are offering the service or are categorized in the service air conditioning repair. The second one is actually a company called Air Conditioning Repair, a very cleverly named company, probably someone who is a slave to search. But this happens, right? Both a direct link to you, I mean, in other words, your specific Yelp listing can rank high, and a more index of air conditioning repair companies can show up. So this is something that's important. And by the way, we can talk about this in the Q&A. You don't have to buy advertising from Yelp in order to win these positions. And maybe we can talk about that when we get to. And then just one more that I just wanted to do as a slide was this was Home Performance Contractor San Francisco, and in this case, Kevel, the folks at Kevel are doing a really good job getting it's obviously Home Performance is in their name and they're San Francisco based, which helps them do that. But in this case, their specific Yelp listing you see comes up, fourth, basically. And so this is another one of those examples. If you came upon this search, you saw Kevel, you saw their website, kevelhome.com, and you saw the opportunity to go look at their reviews, 12 reviews on Yelp. There's a real question going on here as to which one of these links happens first. And so this is terrific, right? And then of course, you see Better Business Bureau there as well. So next slide. What that all translates, in my mind, from a priority standpoint for contractors, companies, businesses in the home performance universe that are in California, is the following, prioritization list. Now, I really want you to do that kind of research and find out for yourselves what is ranking high. And of course, you should know from your own analytics as to what traffic is coming from various review sites and what you just generally hear about. We hear about reviews on Yelp and so forth. But I think that Google, first and foremost, is priority number one. And the reasons for that are the cloud of Google, the fact that it is a ranking factor in terms of how high up you're going to search, and those slides that I showed you that had those stars so ubiquitously spread out everywhere in search. And remember, 5 is the threshold. So my priority for you in terms of getting to Google is get to 5 and put an asterisk on that because we're going to come back to it in just a second. Don't do it all at once, but we'll talk more about that. But getting to 5 at least gets you those stars, and then you can measure your performance against competitors and so forth as to whether or not you need to kind of keep that Google train running. Secondly, I think Yelp. Just everywhere I look in California, Yelp is just on the rise. We saw it in all of those search results. We see it in the traffic from to websites of our customers in California. It's very big, and they're making a big push in service businesses. Many of us, and me included, some months ago would have never in a million years have thought of using Yelp to search for a contractor. I use Yelp to find a restaurant when I'm in a foreign city. Yelp is really pushing hard on service area businesses, and it's becoming more and more important. As you could see, it's performing really well in search. And then I think the other issue about Yelp, and the reason for focusing on it, is that people tend to be it's a little more critical in tone. My experience is that the tendency of Yelp reviewers tends to be maybe leaning a little bit negative, certainly much more direct and honest, not the kind of place where there's just sort of attaboy, pat you on the back kind of stuff. So Yelp, I think, especially for all of you in California, is number 2. Third is, are these more contractor-centric sites? And Angie's List, again, I think has to be looked at in terms of your own individual kind of, the relevance of Angie's List in your area. One of the things that's a little bit hard to know about Angie's List is how many members they have in any given area. It's not consistent, and so you kind of probably have a sense of whether there's real activity on Angie's List and traffic coming through from Angie's List. If that's the case, then I think you definitely want to have an Angie's List piece. And the one that I've noticed, especially again in California, given the technology center of the world, is that some of these newfangled sites, and Thumbtack in particular, are starting to rise up. And so again, Thumbtack is worth getting a listing on Thumbtack. I think it's free. You don't tend to see a lot of reviews there yet, but there certainly is that capability for reviews there. And then the fourth one that I list is City Search, and the reason for putting City Search forth is that it's a feeder for a lot of other review sites. So that's the priority, and again, in the questions we can talk about this. Next slide, please. Just to kind of emphasize this point about the interconnectedness of these things, there is a lot of it, right? So we don't have to kind of look at all the specific lines of this, but I do note, look at how many lines are coming out of City Search and going to various other locations. Google is not taking listings from anybody else. Yelp, has recently kind of done some partnerships with Yahoo, so there may be some integration there. But, generally speaking, Yelp and Google tend to be kind of standalone, and the rest of them tend to be somewhat integrated and connected with each other. But the reason for City Search being kind of the fourth priority is that it feeds a lot of the other ones. Next slide, please. If you're getting more sophisticated about this and you want to move through those priorities, remember one of the things in that search ranking factor is diversity. So having more of them out there, these are the remaining ones that I think are kind of the most important. Bing and Yahoo, Super Pages, the Better Business Bureau we saw really coming up, and some of these kind of insider pages and Best of the Web. Now, as we'll see in just a second, there's some ways to figure out whether these are happening. Next slide, please. We tend to skip over this too often, and I just want to make sure to mention Facebook because in some ways, if you guys think that the Yelp world is a bit of the Wild West in terms of kind of controlling what happens there, Facebook is even more Wild West. It's you can kind of say anything, and yet that star rating on your Facebook business page is coming up very, very high. So here's ABC Heating and Cooling's site. They're doing fantastic with really good reviews, but there's not a lot of rules and regulations. It's not very clear what's an acceptable review or how you get one taken down. I think it's going to get more sophisticated, but that star rating on your homepage is very, very prominent. So again, don't leave Facebook out. Keep an eye on it and make sure you're in good shape there. All right, so next slide. So managing this just got a lot easier. Many of you probably heard a few weeks ago, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks ago now, that Google kind of named their whole local business system Google My Business, and it really didn't change anything outwardly from the standpoint of the Google, what used to be Google Places and is now local Google Plus pages. That kind of confusing mess from the consumer standpoint still exists, but on the back end, on Google My Business, they've added some really nice data features, and one in particular is this review tool. And so for free, just for signing up for your Google My Business page, you have probably the best source of information about all of your reviews across the web that could exist. So at the top of this page, you see that there's 2 reviews that are from Google users, right? And then at the bottom of the page, and we'll click to the next slide, you see reviews from around the web. So this is both indexing reviews that are done on Google, and also reviews from various other places throughout the web. This is not 100% definitive because they don't tell you what they do, but I have never seen an Angie's List, a Home Advisor, a Thumbtack, or a Facebook in that aggregated from around the web. But it does have, as you can see here, Merchant Circle and Better Business Bureau and Insider Pages and HotFrog. And again, this is, if you haven't already kind of claimed and logged into your Google My Business page, go there today. You'll have to get your site, you'll get verified and so forth. But it's very important for lots of reasons, but in addition has this really terrific tool. And Chris, was this where we were going to stick another poll in, or did I have one more slide?
Nope, this is it. So Karen, if you would launch the poll question, please. So our next poll question is, how many reviews do you currently have on an internet third-party sites? So we'll get that launched here shortly. Okay, let's see. We're having a little bit of a technical problem. Here we go. Okay, here we go. This poll should be coming up now. So how many reviews do you currently have on internet third-party sites? And we'll give this a few seconds, give everybody a chance to weigh in and think about and select their answers. Okay, a few more seconds here. Just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to respond. Okay, it looks like we're nice and consistent now, so I will close the poll and share the poll, and here we go.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty even. So congratulations to those of you on the from 10 and up. I think is pretty good. One of the things that you notice, it depends on your business model. In more traditional, those of you who may be in the more traditional HVAC side of things, the reviews have been kind of more part of the game, and so your competition is probably a lot more. If you're on the home performance, more pure insulation or home performance side, you can be in that 0 to 10 and be okay. But that's very interesting distribution, I think. A couple more things, just go to the next slide, just about this tool, this review tool, in addition to kind of just being a fantastic means of tracking, is they have a nice little roll-up, so you get a, it tells you how many reviews you've got in total, and And if they had reviews from other places, that little donut would kind of show different colors for for the different things. You get a sense of your distribution of your reviews, how many 5s and 4s and so forth. And then the other thing, in the next slide, please, which we'll talk more about in just a second, if you'll notice here that there's under each one of those reviews, there is a view and edit response. And so we'll talk more about that in just a second, but right from within this dashboard, you can respond to reviews. And I'll make this point again, but people tend to make the mistake of thinking that responses are only for negatives. And I would just strongly encourage you to think about responding to positive reviews as well, because it's good content, it's good engagement, it's just good all around. All right, so next slide, please. So let's get to this whole challenge now. You get a program going, which we'll talk about, but and it's painstaking, right? The challenge of finding the right customer to ask, getting them to actually do it, and then having them go through the process and write a review on Yelp and have that not show up because it gets filtered is just an incredibly painful thing. And so let's talk next about about these filters. And when we talk about them, for the most part, it's really Google Plus and Yelp that have aggressive filters or finely tuned filters for trying to make this happen. And so next slide. At the end of the day, what both of these sites want are an organic flow of reviews, right? So they don't want, and you don't have to read this whole thing, but this is what Google says. Sometimes our algorithms may flag and remove legitimate reviews. Important to say, this is just getting done by a machine, right? It's an algorithm that is, looking at a review. We know it's frustrating, but the goal of this is to help everyone by ensuring that reviews appearing on Google are authentic, relevant, and useful. And so, if you think about that, just, those kinds of terms, they just want kind of real, meaningful, hopefully the appearance of kind of organically written reviews. Next slide, please. So here are the things in a general sense. This applies both to Google as well as to Yelp, that are the most important factors in not getting your reviews filtered. The first of those is the pace of reviews, right? And they call that velocity, meaning that if you listen to me and for the rest of this week you rush out and suddenly you went from 2 reviews on Google to having 10 suddenly, that gets flagged as something that's kind of out of the norm, right? That's not organic. Doesn't have a natural feel. It's like somebody's kind of woke up, they've got a campaign going. In Google, and this is part of the frustration of this, is there can be no duplicates. So Google, knowing all that Google knows about things on the internet, can identify when a review exists on your website, when it exists throughout all those other websites, etc. And if it is duplicate, meaning the exact same review lives somewhere else on the web, they won't publish it. That's another factor in review. Frustrating, right? It's very, very difficult. Third, you are the rules are never incentivize, and absolutely never pay. And there's some really, especially on Yelp, there's some horrible consequences for kind of getting caught doing any kind of false reviews. So you're not supposed to incentivize them, and that includes even like an Amazon gift card, and you're never supposed to pay them. You shouldn't review yourself, and you should be mindful of of obvious connections to your company if it's all your staff and employees and that kind of stuff. And then the other thing, that their search engines are always looking for is kind of spam. People trying to create links and stuff. So just don't ever put URLs in a review. So those are the major ones for kind of on a global sense. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about Yelp, because this is where I've seen the most trouble. People have really gone to a lot of good effort and have gotten legitimate reviews, and they have gotten filtered. And these are the things that that Yelp is kind of filtering on. When someone is a brand new user to Yelp and has written one review, typically that it tends to be a filtering event. So you can't, it's very hard to sort of have somebody who, you say, hey, would you write me a review on Yelp and have that on Yelp and have that person be the first reviewer there. The same goes, so basically what they're trying to get away from is people who just kind of sign up to write a particular review. The second point is they have no profile information, none of the other things that people typically put on their Yelp profile, like their photograph and links and that kind of stuff. That's a filtering event. Thirdly, if it's a super, slanted review in both directions, right? It can be both highly negative, it can be both highly positive. If it's short and lacking in details, and then if it's from a location other than where the business is. So in other words, if you get your mom, on the East Coast to write you a review, and she's detected as having kind of written that review from New York, and you're in California, chances are that may get filtered. Most importantly, though, are these two things at the top, which is brand new users to Yelp tend to get filtered. Next slide. All right, what do you do when you get that negative review? Because this is, and I said it earlier, I repeat it, I think it's going to happen, right? It's just no matter how perfect we are, at some point it's going to go that way. Next slide. The first thing that everybody wants to know is, how do I get it taken down, right? And the truth is, there's no democracy here, right? So these things, I just decided to take it right out of Google's thing. The only things that Google considers to be inappropriate, right, are inappropriate content, advertising and spam, off-topic reviews, and conflict of interest. I mean, those are the things that you have the ability to appeal to Google on about a negative review. And so, sometimes if you can identify that someone is an employee of another company or something like that, and it's truly nefarious like that, you might luck out and get a negative review taken down. But if it's a legitimate, complaint, and it doesn't have to be a complaint about service. We'll talk about this in just a second. The complaint could be, I didn't get a phone call back in a timely fashion. It could be anything like that. Those are all legitimate reviews, and the chances of you getting them taken down are really quite slim. So next slide, please. I think that the answer to what do you do when you get a negative review is, I have experienced folks who have appealed directly to that person. In other words, used offline means to reach out to them to say, we saw the review, we know what happened. Try to fix the problem with the customer, because at the end of the day, if that review is legit by the standards of Google and Yelp, it's not coming down unless that person does something with it. And so we've had situations where people either took it down or they've gone back and said, you know what, since writing this review, the company contacted me, blah, 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 and I'm changing. Secondly, respond. You saw the mechanism inside of Google for responding to reviews. Yelp has that same mechanism. I absolutely believe that every single negative review should get some kind of response that shows you're dealing with it. At the end of the day, the number of positives that you get that just dilutes that negative review and sort of dilutes the average impact that it has is the most important thing. And if you think you can appeal, give it a try, but it rarely works. So next slide. And here's, I pulled up one example from one of our customers on the East Coast. Many of you may know Dan Kartzman at Powersmith, ex-Bay Area guy. This was, so you look at this page. This is their Google Plus, review page. They've got a 4.4 average, which is very solid on 6 reviews. 4 stars. You go down this list. Experience was excellent. Can't say enough. Experience was exceptional. And you get down to a 2-star review that says, I very much don't appreciate the spamming Craigslist with bogus job ads. This is what I mean by the topic of the review can be in left field relative to the, the service of that company. But they took the time and said, Trish, we realize it's later, wanted to clear this up. We certainly don't spam. Just a good, thoughtful, honest, direct response. I think the average consumer looking at this, right, seeing in this case 5 really positive reviews and one kind of out there thing that the owner responded to, I think you'd wash that away in just a second. So, all right, I think we got one more poll.
Yes, we do. So
we're going to do now.
Just one moment, and we'll get that up. So, everyone, we would like to understand which of the following sites do you consider important for your business. You can click all that apply. So we'll give a few moments here for everyone to weigh in. I want to give it a few more seconds here, make sure we've got everybody has had a chance to respond. Okay, I think we've got everybody, so we will share the results. So it looks like Google Plus and Yelp and Angie's List are the clear predominant methods that you are using out there.
Yeah, well, good. I think that's spot on. Pretty spot on with what I thought the priorities were too. So I'm glad to get that confirmation. All right. So let's just wrap up here by just talking a little bit about, how do you turn this into a business process that, can be systematized and kind of run on a regular basis. Next slide, please. The first thing I think we all just have to acknowledge is this is not easy, right? They do not make it easy for, for Google and for Angie's List and for Yelp. There is a ton of friction between a request by you for a review and then that review actually getting done. I have to be a member of Google Plus. I have to be a member of, I have to be signed up with Yelp. I actually have to pay a membership fee to Angie's List. So it's not easy. As we talked about, these filters are aggressive. In some cases, the interface is just not that good. Customers don't have a lot to do, or don't have a lot of time on their hands. And so, I think we just need to acknowledge the fact that we probably have one shot at the apple. When you've got a good customer that's very happy, we call them promoters, or you've got one shot at the apple, and try to make that request do. And of course, I know you have nothing else to do. So I just want to acknowledge this is not easy, but I think there's some ways, we go to the next slide, to make this a little bit more systematized. First of all, I think it's a company culture thing. If you make it the point of people on your crews to know that you are invested in these reviews and you actively want the feedback of your customers, I think that starts it. Then it's a question of process, right? At what point do you ask? Who do you ask? And then, do you repeat the request? This is pretty standard stuff, right? If you buy something on Amazon, you realize that Amazon will, on a certain time clock later, will ask you for a review of that and potentially do it again. I think repeating systematically is important. And then I think the other thing is to leverage the reviews, right? Be careful about, you've got the asterisk here is that you can't leverage, you can't use a Google review somewhere else, but if you have positive reviews on Yelp and so forth, trumpet that on your website. One of the things that's sort of a hidden kind of pro tip, best practice, is if you've got filtered reviews on Yelp, take the copy and put it on your website. Here are reviews that we received on Yelp that don't show up because of the filter. That's totally legit things to do. So again, try to make it a system. Next, please. The biggest thing that I find folks struggling with is just that, the process of asking. And so it's just very important to people are willing to do it. Ask when the perceived value is the highest, and you know this better than anybody else. At what point in the process does is the customer experience with you at its peak? Is it after the job is done and they've realized the comfort of the home? Is it, after the sex appeal of the audit process? Whenever it is, make sure that you're asking at the right time. In my opinion, don't expect more than one review per customer. Don't, if someone's going to do it for you, the likelihood of them doing Google and Yelp and Angie's List is pretty low. So I recommend giving them a choice. Let them choose whichever of the sites they are most comfortable with, and that helps you both with the velocity issue, right? There's a certain randomness will happen as a result of that. It also helps you with the fact that, if I'm not a member of Yelp, the chances of me selecting Yelp to write a review are pretty low, so that whole filtering challenge could go away. A best practice with respect to knowing whether somebody is in Google Plus is if they have a Gmail address. So if I can identify that Gmail address, that's a really good way to target them. Obviously, there's an age skew here. So the younger the homeowner is, the customer is, the more likely they're going to be in this kind of comfortable world of actually writing reviews. It's important to tune your request. I think we tend, would you write us a review, is certainly one way to do it. But if you framed it a little bit differently, if you had a good experience with us and are interested in helping our company get the word out about this service that we offer that not too many people know about, then it's a little bit more maybe altruistic on the behalf of the reviewer. So think about how you make that ask. And as I said, slow and steady wins the race. The kind of episodic or kind of campaign-oriented approach, you will just put in so much effort and get a big, you might get a spike, but then you get 14 results in Yelp filtered, and all that effort is kind of for naught. So trying to figure out a slow and steady pace. Next slide. And I just got a couple more here. My view is that you should have a process by asking every one of your customers for feedback, right? And many of you obviously do this now. But if you do this in the way I'm going to suggest here, you can then use feedback from everyone to identify the people who are your happiest customers. We call them evangelists, we call them promoters. And those are the people you want writing reviews, right? The thing you don't want to have happen is you ask somebody for a review not realizing that that person may have had a negative experience, and your work goes into something that's not helping you. So we like to ask everybody and then identify those who are the true promoters of your business. Do they write reviews is certainly a factor. Are they younger and more computer savvy? And the whole question of kind of Gmail. Do they have Gmail? That's one way to do it. And again, like I said, it's okay to repeat the ask. Next question. I think, a simple online survey. This is created using SurveyMonkey, just an available online tool that goes out and asks a series of questions, and this is available to everybody, right? And you ask, the routine kinds of things, tell us about your satisfaction with the team, thinking about the benefits, how would you rate each of the following? We don't have to go through the details. You can use this to customize. But the next slide, the one question that I think is proven to be the most powerful from the standpoint of how to, in a simple way, how to identify those people who are promoters versus what are called detractors is the Net Promoter Score, NPS. Some of you probably heard of it. I know you've all been asked this question by various companies in the world. On a scale of 0 to 10, what is the likelihood that you would recommend XYZ home performance to a colleague or a friend? And this is a singular and very kind of well-honed and proven approach where someone who gives you a 9 or a 10 is a promoter, 7 or 8 are passive, 6 or below are detractors, and that is, in my view, the kind of the simplest and best way to identify those people who are your promoters and therefore the ones likely to do that. And if you want to be more sophisticated about the NPS thing, it can become a score, as you see down below here, that the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors gives you a score on a 100 scale score that's a really good measure of satisfaction of, of how well you're doing. So I like this a lot. And again, these are things that can be kind of implemented pretty easily and inexpensively. All right, so wrap up, and then we'll go to some questions and discussion if that's the case. My thoughts are use that tool, the Google My Business tool, to assess kind of where you stand, what the state of the state is of your reviews out there, and do a little bit of that research. It seemed clear that people had a pretty good sense of priority based on that poll question, but I do want everyone to get over that 5 threshold with Google. That's critical. Make sure Yelp is in order, and so forth. And then if you can figure out a way to operationalize that feedback solicitation. Sometimes it's, what I was just describing, that SurveyMonkey could just be embedded on a web page that's, yourwebsite.com/feedback. Send everybody there. You can send it, leave behind postcard. You can email them. It's all pretty straightforward. But try to make that process get systematized, because back to this whole issue of the filters, an even, steady pace is what's going to make this kind of work for you. And then finally, just commit to this for the long haul. It's just, the sudden burst of energy, I got to go fix my review situation, it tends not to work, and a lot of effort can be put in that doesn't prove fruitful. So I'll stop there. Appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully this was useful, and I'm excited to hear if there are questions or comments or feedback.
Thank you, Peter. Great presentation, lots to think about, and great tools. So we are at our Q&A session, which we will continue with until 10:30. I wanted to remind everybody to, if you have a specific question for Peter, to submit it through the questions pane on your control panel. That will allow me to relay it into the conversation. And we already have some questions in the pipeline, Peter, so I'm going to start there. The first question is it okay to send a $5 Starbucks card to your Angie's List customers, thanking them for their review, and then ask them to post on Yelp?
Good question. So it's important to say that the rules for what is acceptable solicitation are different on every one of these sites, and Angie's List, frankly, is probably the most flexible. So pretty much, I believe it's acceptable to even pay the membership of someone on Angie's List. So I think that Starbucks card is okay. Yelp is the most strict and draconian on the question of solicitation, and frankly it's kind of maddening. They literally say that you are not supposed to solicit people to write reviews, and so I would just be especially careful. But what was just described, the Angie's List and a $5 Starbucks card and a, would you mind writing us a review on Yelp? I think, depending on how you communicate that, that's probably okay.
Okay, great. Next question is, for positive reviews, Yelp recommends not to respond publicly. Do you agree? It appears from the outside that we aren't responding.
I know, this is another one of these issues that makes me kind of want to bang my head against the wall. It is absolutely accurate to say that is what Yelp says, and so I think as a result, I think I would be more measured about it. It is very different on Google, where I think I've seen folks respond to every single review, and I have no indication whatsoever that there's any kind of filtering activity for that. So I would be measured on Yelp, just given that is what their rule is. Don't be careful about responding to every positive, but if there's something substantive, something about what was said in that review that kind of justifies a response of some kind, as opposed to just thanks for the great review, then I think that would be the kind of one to cherry pick a little bit and just do it occasionally, just don't do it all the time.
Okay, great. Our next question is, can a Google review show up on an Angie's List site? And if it does, would it be considered a duplicate review?
Yeah, well, so obviously if a person goes and writes a review on Google and then copy and paste the same content in various other locations, you run the risk that Google will identify that as duplicate content, and therefore will filter it on Google. Right, so you run the risk in this particular situation where it maybe stays on Angie's List, but you lose it on Google. Now, Angie's List is a little, Google obviously indexes everything and has a lot of, indexing. Angie's List, because it's membership only, is a little harder for Google to get into. And so I have not seen a ton of filtering from reviews on Angie's List and on Google, but virtually everywhere else that doesn't have that kind of membership hurdle into it, we've definitely seen if it's duplicate on Yelp and Google, it gets taken down on Google. So again, knowing that it's Google and how sort of all powerful and all seeing Google is with respect to data on the internet, I'm kind of making the bet that eventually they're going to figure out the duplicate thing. The one that's very frustrating, of course, is having the review on your own site, and that's where it seems totally legitimate to me that a review on Google could be replicated. There are some, so you can't do that, but there are some ways, and it's probably on the geeky side here, but if anyone wants to email me for the instructions on this, there are some ways to embed your Google reviews on your site. So, and that's not, that doesn't violate the duplicate rule, so that's possible.
Great. And I will display Peter's contact information at the end of the QA session here, so those of you that would like to obtain those instructions have his email address. Also, the webinar is being recorded, will be posted on the Build It Green website along with a PDF of today's presentation. So you have several options to get Peter's contact information and follow up on that. Our next question is, what is the suggested process to ask for the customer's review change after you have taken care of their concerns and they are now happy?
Yeah, so I believe in both, it's certainly the case in Google that there's an edit button. If I, if I go back to that review, if I'm the one who wrote it, I can go back in and I can edit it and completely change it. So that's pretty straightforward. I believe that's the case in Yelp as well, is that the user has the ability to edit, and so. That most importantly, I've seen a couple things happen here. One is people will just go edit their review. That's part of the best of scenario. In some cases, they'll write another one and say, even though I had this old review, I'm going to write a second one because the company kind of got back to me. That's not my preference. I mean, I'd rather kind of erase the, the negative one as much as possible. But in either case, I think, those are both really good outcomes if if you can resolve that person's problem satisfactorily. And, and there's nothing better, right, than a customer that says, we did have an initially bad experience. We wrote about that bad experience, but the company really rose to the occasion. That says a lot about you, and so I think that can be a real positive.
Okay, our next question is, Google seems to have a lock on reviews. Do I need to pay attention to any other review outlet?
I think that really depends on your business model and your, and the sort of geography that you're working in. I think, as I've said throughout this session, everywhere I look in the state of California, Yelp is very much on the rise. And so, so again, I think that's a judgment call that you need to make about whether, the relevance of Yelp in your particular market. As I said, it tends to skew younger. It tends to skew more urban. It's, definitely as you kind of, sort of the closer you are to the Bay Area, the more relevant it seems to be. If you're kind of more rural, then I would say maybe Yelp isn't that important. But, you have to do a little bit of that research to kind of figure that out. For sure, Google, the presence of those stars everywhere is why I make, the claim that Google's, that much more important. So, and then just keep in mind, part of this is that overall factor of how well you rank in local search, and the number of reviews, the diversity of reviews. These are all, things that matter in that thing. So make a call based on your own, your own situation. But again, Google first. Yelp second. I think Angie's List, again, if I think you all sort of know the relevance of Angie's List and how big the membership is in your particular service area, and that's the determining factor for that.
Okay, great. Our next question has to do with the company culture that you had mentioned. Should I train my entire staff about reviews, or should I have one staff person specialize in monitoring and following up on reviews?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's somewhat business model dependent. If what I do think is very important, because is the customer-facing members of your staff. So if it's a service tech, if it's someone in sales, if it's an energy auditor, if it's the crew, the install crew, the people that have face time with the customers, I think it is a very good thing to put the expectation on their shoulders that they are responsible for getting reviews for their own work. So especially around, this is pretty tried and true amongst HVAC companies. The service techs often leave a card or something like that. So, and you can build this into their performance review, right? There's, it takes a little bit of tracking, of course, but you can know that, service tech A, got more reviews. His reviews on average were more positive, et cetera. So I think that's, if you've got multiple people that are interfacing with customers, that's good. If your model is a little bit different, then, the kind of systems that I talked about, take a little bit of management, right? It's not super sophisticated stuff, but somebody's got to remember to send that email following the visit, and that can absolutely be managed, by someone in admin in the office, and so forth. So I guess I'm sort of hedging a little bit on the answer because of the business model thing, but I think a little bit of both. Some one person really needs to kind of look at it all and monitor and see what's going on. But the solicitation, all my experience has been that person delivering a satisfactory job on site is more likely to get a successful review than if you kind of wait, a week later and somebody sends an email. Related to this discussion is what's the best means of asking. And so, we tend to lean a little bit on email just because it's pretty straightforward and easy, right? You can put a link in there. You can link to that survey page that I described about. That's pretty straightforward. I do think that in our world generally, a postcard or a leave behind or something after the job is done, I think is proven. We've done some experiments with that. It's proven to work pretty well. I would use your own judgment again about what you think is going to best motivate your, your particular customer base.
Great. Well, we have a question in, and I'm afraid it has an acronym in it that I'm not familiar with, but I'm sure you'll recognize. The question is PPC versus organic placement. Which really makes sense, management versus PPC?
Yeah, so so PPC stands for pay per click, and what this is, the question is referring to is paid Google search versus organic Google search. And those of you who know me know that I am a kind of a convert to PPC. I used to not like it very much. So I think, again, it's a little bit business dependent, but I have become an advocate for paid search for a couple of reasons. Number one, it works. I mean, we're doing it all across the country, and on behalf of home performance contractors, and you know, it performs pretty well very well on a cost per acquisition basis. I mean, the beauty of it, of course, is if it's not performing well, you just turn it off, and it's a fairly low risk kind of thing to do. Organic, we saw some results here where some companies that we know in the program in California are performing pretty well. Organic is always best, and so making this call is very much dependent on kind of where you are at a given time. If you are, recently launched your website, you don't have a lot of history, you don't have a lot of good rankings now, then pay-per-click is one way to kind of, immediately start generating leads. The organic traffic road is a bit of a longer road. It'll take some time. It's a beautiful thing when it works. I mean, one of our clients in the East Coast is up to about almost 1,000 organic visits a month and a conversion rate on those organic visits of 7%. So we're talking about a lot of leads that are happening just from organic traffic and really no cost. Now, it's a bit of a falsity, I guess, to say that organic is free, because successful performance in organic means that you're doing a good job on content, you're doing a good job on building links to your website. Fresh content on your website is very, very important to how well you perform organically. So, and one more thing about this discussion is that Google, as most of you know, has essentially stripped out any information about the source of organic traffic, meaning so that all Google searches now are secure, meaning that although we know the traffic came from search, we don't know that the search term was Energy Audit Oakland, right? One of the benefits of being in the mix around pay-per-click is that you have access to all that data. Not only what is driving the clicks, but sometimes you get fewer clicks and much better conversion from a particular term versus some term that has lots and lots of clicks but nothing converts. And so there is a ton of data learning to be done when you have Google AdWords, in the mix. And like I said, it's pretty low risk. You got to give it a couple of months, but you have complete control over your budget. You want to spend $30, a day. You want to spend $30 a week. Those numbers are entirely in your control. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, and so forth. So hopefully that I got that question right and answered it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question here. What are the ups and downs of hiring my teenage son to build my company Facebook page?
Many of you probably know Dan Thompson from Los Angeles, Building Doctors, and he's famous for giving this speech about hiring his girlfriend to build his website, and says, don't do that because they broke up. There's two sides to this coin. The younger generation that grew up with these tools in their hands use them so fluidly that I think there is a ton of benefit that folks at that age kind of just intuitively get the medium, right? They understand it. It's in their blood in the way that those of us have had to find out, older people had to figure it out. So I guess that's one side. I definitely think in social media skewing young is good. The downside, of course, is the is the consistency and reliability of 15-year-olds. So I've got a 19-year-old who's marginally consistent. I hear tons of stories of my college son who's a computer programmer is building my website, but he doesn't have time for it, and so forth. So I just think so much of these things we've been talking about today, whether it's reviews, whether it's consistency within Facebook, they are all about that steady pace. And so I would just answer that question by saying, beware of the danger of the kid who's got some summertime and suddenly goes back to school, the intern, that comes in for the summer and then kind of goes away, and that, that you get a spike of activity and then it goes away. As much as you possibly can kind of make this stuff steady and ingrained in your company culture, the better.
Actually, I think we have time for one more question here.
Good.
Which is, are testimonials on my website as effective as third-party reviews?
Well, they're very effective, and I'm glad that question came up because thank you whoever asked it, because I sort of glossed over it a little bit here in this discussion. The first question to ask is, where is your potential customer, the person looking, consuming the information, right? And so we're always in this game, and part of this whole discussion has been, this competition for, of course, we want to get them to our website, but chances are, given the state of the state in the world these days, people are going to look at these third-party sites. So I think if you've got a good, successful web presence going, and if you you have really good reviews and you've got them populated, getting that content on your website is also very, very valuable. And it's valuable not just for the person who reads it. I think, as you can imagine, people who see a review on your website are going to, there's a certain kind of filter that goes with that, right? You're not going to put up something negative. So yet at the same time, if you can make those appear genuine, if you can have lots of them, they're very valuable. They're valuable for more than just the message, right? Because the content, right? I talked a little bit about fresh content being this key factor. A regular stream of testimonials is fantastic fresh content, and relatively easy fresh content. Again, if you're kind of have a good system for collecting that. The other thing that's very critical about on-site testimonials is it's an opportunity for you to get geographic content into your website. So one of the challenges all of us face, California is especially the case, if you're serving the Bay Area, and it is very difficult to have your website be optimized for all of the cities and towns and communities in the Bay Area, right? You can't, there's just no way that you're going to be equally strong in Concord as you are in Hayward, as you are in Oakland, as you are in Berkeley. So one of the things that testimonials give you the opportunity to do is say Agatha J, Hayward, California. That little bits and pieces of that geographic content help paint the picture of the service area that you're in and help you overcome some of that bias that Google has towards wherever your office happens to be located. So again, I'm a huge fan, and again, you can, a lot of us tend to have a little sidebar widget or something that has a rotating customer testimonial. Sometimes it is the right answer to make the lead message on your site third-party reviews, testimonials by other people. And as I said before, in addition to to sites or testimonials existing on your website, if you're doing well in Google and you're doing well in Yelp and elsewhere, trumpet the fact that you've got good positive reviews on those other sites.
Thank you, Peter. This is a great webinar, and we got lots of great questions, so very much appreciate all the wonderful information. Before we leave today, I just want to remind everybody that next week on the 30th, the Northern California Collaboration Forum will be meeting from 9 to 10 a.m. and if you are not already on our notification list, please send me an email at chris@efficiencyfirstca.org and I'll add you to the notification list. Again, we have 2 webinars coming up from Efficiency First, the National Trade Association for the Home Performance Industry. One is tomorrow, July 23rd from 9:30 to 11 a.m. on efficient operations. And then again on August 7th, 9:30 to 11 a.m., Good, Better, Best, Navigating the All-Important Kitchen Table Talk. And then on August 14th, we have another webinar in the Build It Green series with John Tooley talking about the first step of quality management, the 5S methodology, and tracking problems. Registration for that is on the Build It Green website, so please take a look at their calendar to register. And then finally, again on August 12th in San Ramon, the regional forum with PG&E. A great place to meet other contractors, get program updates and training and education, and provide feedback to the program implementers. So please make sure these are on your calendar and join us whenever you can. With that, I would like to thank you again, Peter, for a really great webinar, and thank everyone for taking the time to attend and your questions and the great discussion today. So we will see you at the next webinar.